Well, hello friends. We are getting into spring and we're getting into the time where I'm doing a lot of my yard maintenance so everything can start growing for the coming season. Now, you have followed me maybe for a few years, maybe you haven't. I've somewhat changed my garden philosophy over the years, as I think we all do. That's what gardening is. Just as the environment is changing, we change with it and adapt, hopefully. And a lot of the new areas I've been putting in, which is a big flower bed behind me I'm going to talk about right now, along my new path that I started putting in last year, I put perennials that are easy care and maintenance, meaning we're gonna go over right now why to me they're so easy. I mow them down in the spring, I mulch them back into the bed, and I let them grow. So they're self-feeding, self-nourishing the ground as they compost back in. But then also, it makes it much easier than having to go through and clear everything by hand, remove everything. But let's talk about a little bit of the ins and outs of this and why I think it's so beneficial. So to start, I think it's important to know I'm using a push mower and it's mulching, meaning right here is an attachment that usually it would shoot out whatever debris you're mowing out the side, sometimes go into a bag or just go out into the yard. This piece being put over that opening is keeping everything it's mowing inside and circulating it around, chopping it up and just letting it fall back down. So it goes right back onto the bed. That's what I mean by mulching. But let's go over to the bed so we can talk a little bit more. You see this long bed. Snow really packed on here during the one big snowstorm we had in January of this year. And what you can tell it did was really just push everything down. I mean, that makes it easier on me here to mow it. But in other years, what I would do for some of these taller things, like you can see the Blue Fortune egg stacky here, it might need to have it be broken off and then be mulched in. Also, you're gonna have to be a little thoughtful about, some of these items have seed heads. Now, most of the seeds probably dropped by now, like on the Rudbeckia and on the Blue Fortune here. But if you're worried about naturalizing and a lot of plants starting, you may wanna remove the seed heads. Personally, I would do that in the fall prior because they're gonna fall over the winter. But it's something to think about. If you don't want those to mulch back into the soil, you won't maybe have as many starts if you remove them. Otherwise, what we have here is a lot of salvia, and you can see it's really starting to push up. I'm not worried if I mow a little bit of this new growth off, it will come back really fast. But all of this debris, this is what is going to really compost back into the soil. But to help it along and help it look better, I'm going to make sure that I mulch it, chop it up, and put it back in. That really helps make it so it can compost easier. Now you will see too, I do have hardwood mulch under here. That's what I was doing to suppress weeds, retain moisture. If I mulch some of that up and chop it back, that's fine too. I'm not worried about that. But all this debris can be worked back into the bed. It's really just self-nourishing, self-beneficial. Now over on the other side of the bed, it is slightly different. I have lots of prairie dropseed grasses. I have some Shenandoah switchgrass. That can be mown over too. It needs to be chopped down either way, so if I can mow some of it, that's great. So I'm gonna start mowing. I'm gonna try to show you exactly what I'm doing. It's really easy. You can set the mower obviously at different levels, which if I need to set it up, I'll do that. Sometimes on things that are a little bit taller, you might wanna set it up. It just depends what you're working with. So I'm gonna take it and mow and just start going down this whole area, mulch it back in. It's actually one of the best feelings because it's so easy. Okay, didn't that look pretty easy? But let's go in and look at it. I don't want you to think I'm showing you from far away and not show you what it looks like up close, because I understand that this can be a look that for some people could seem a little scary or not look nice enough overall. So as we get in, I'm gonna talk about how I clean this path back up, by the way. As we get in, what you're gonna notice is, if you watched closely, sometimes with my foot, I was pushing some of the debris back into the mower as it would fall over because I needed to. But where you saw all of those kind of foliage from last season that's dormant and gone and dead, you now see it just as a fine material. So if we pick up this stuff, look at all that mulched. Some of it's the hardwood mulch and some of it's that plant debris. Kip is coming to inspect too. And what it does is, it just puts it back in the soil. So when things are mulched up finer, it's gonna be able to compost back down quicker. Now what you will notice is, there's some pieces of the agastache that maybe didn't get mulched up, but honestly, for how much there was, I'm actually pretty happy with this. So what's nice is you can easily now go in and pick up some of these sticks if you want to. With me, usually what I do is, a little bit of the plant came up with this one, which I'm not worried about because there's tons of the plant. What I would do is maybe pick them up. We're just gonna plant that back in. That's how easy it is. Guys, don't let gardening scare you. These, I'm just gonna throw to the back of the bed because guess what? In a couple months, this bed is gonna be so full of foliage and blooms, you will see none of this bare in between mulched area. It gets so full, which if you look down this, all those perennials get big and fill in, which is exactly what I designed this bed to do. Now look at all this beneficial, everything that's waking up. We have ladybugs that are coming to the surface. So we've been having an early spring. You want to do this when temperatures are staying consistently above 50 degrees to make sure all the pollinators have woken up from their homes and habitats over the winter and are back to life. They have been for quite a while here. So what I'm going to do now is go get my leaf blower so I can clean all this up. Honestly, that leaf blower, that's what I do after winter anyway. Any debris that's sitting in a gravel path can slowly turn into soil and eventually become a breeding ground for weeds, which right there is some grass that's coming up. I want to pull that out. Anytime before the season, the most weeds you can get out, the better. Honestly, I will blow this path off, kind of weekly during the summer, just because if I get grass clippings on or anything, I want them off of that path. But you can see how quickly that mess from the mower cleaned up, and look at this bed. It's amazing. This methodology, which I did not come up with. I have seen a lot of renowned gardeners that are more in the, slightly more native landscape. This is something they've been doing for years. So being able to apply this to beds like this is a game changer if you want to have large areas of blooms, but don't have maybe the time to put in as much effort or work. This is a great way to do it. So I have other beds I do this too, but I need to talk about hydrangeas and what I'm trimming on down, because that's one of the things that is too obviously woody for this machine. This bed has a lot of salvia. This is right kind of close to where I was. So I was working right over there. We're just right around here. This is where I put a lot of my aloe and agave on that table. And this bed has a lot of things that can be mown down. It has lots of allium, different types of summer blooming allium, I should say. It has summer beauty and millennium. It has lots of just salvias. It has caradonna. It has meadows. I think the white mountain maybe salvia. Anyway, but then it also has obviously some boxwood. Those I do not trim yet. And it has these Seaside Serenade Bar Harbor Series hydrangea. So these are an arborensis, and this is a good time to talk about the different types of hydrangea. For all purposes and points in my yard, I have two types of hydrangea. I don't think I have any of the mop head. I have only two types in my yard. I have arborensis, which is any of your Annabelle style hydrangea. They get a nice big beautiful head. Annabelle themselves can sometimes fall over in rain, but that's why I like these Bar Harbor. They're an Annabelle variety, but don't really fall over as bad. Then there's paniculata, or panicle hydrangea. And I can actually take you over here to where I have quite a few of those. If you remember, I have a big row of limelight hydrangeas. Limelight are one of the most, to me, iconic paniculata hydrangeas because they're beautiful. They get massive blooms. And this is a row I put in about 3 years ago. And last year, it finally topped out around 4 foot. And that is now the point where I'm going to keep it, because these can get 8 to 10 foot tall. They get really big and beautiful. So paniculata and arborensis, there's one really important reason to know I grow those, not only because they do well in my Zone 5B here in Iowa, and they do well in cold. They bloom on both old and new wood, which means it is super easy to care for them. These limelights, while you can't tell, most of their flowers just blow off in the winter. But they have now gotten very nice, sturdy shoots. So I wanted them to grow until they were about 4 feet without any trimming, because I want them to have really main branches, and you can see some of them in here. If you look at some of the main branches, they're getting quite stocky and sturdy. These flowers get really big and heavy. So now that they're at 4 feet, after this year, I'm gonna start trimming them back to that 4 foot, and they'll have this nice sturdy stocky base of growth that they'll be able to hold up the blooms year after year. Arborensis, on the other hand, these, while they could bloom on old and new wood, I prune these all the way down to the ground every year. I have found it does not matter if you leave some, if you keep them a foot high or not, if they have a sturdier base. It doesn't. Cutting them down to the ground allows for all that new growth to come out. It allows, I find, just a nicer shrub during the growing season. So right now, when they're just beginning to show signs of life, which their buds are swelling. So if we look in here, you can see their buds. They're swelling. It's time for me to just cut them down so they don't start growing too much here. But what's great about these is no matter where I cut them, they're gonna bloom this year. And that really goes the same for limelights, but limelights, once they get to a certain size, if you cut them down, it really shocks them too far. That 4-foot mark for me is kind of perfect. If you go too much farther, it's gonna take them a while to grow. So these, on the other hand, I'm gonna cut all the way down to the ground, and I'll show you here how. So I wanna be able to get my mower in here, but it's gonna be, these are too stocky and woody for that. So I first come in with a nice sharp shears here, and I cut down all this growth. Just like other arborensis, like Annabelle, these have a tendency to start sending up new shoots. So this is a great time of year. Like right here is a new shoot that's kind of off by itself. You could dig this up, get a little bit of root with it, go plant it anywhere you want, and eventually you're gonna have another shrub. That's how easy arborensis are to start. Usually an Annabelle variety does not do well in full direct sun. In the middle of summer, they'll start looking burned, their flowers will look like they're not getting the water they need. This Bar Harbor series that I have, it does better and adapts better to the sun, which is why I have these here. Traditional Annabelle varieties I keep around my garden shed on the east side or even on the north side. They do great there. I wouldn't put those in full sun. So what I'm gonna do is go through, cut all this down. Then if you look at all these leaves and debris that are in here, all this is gonna get now mulched up with that same mower. So now what I can do, I left all those sticks that I had just cut off from those hydrangea. Arborensis are one of the only varieties, or they are the only variety, that I would take down to the ground. Now, some people don't like to. Do your own research, decide what you want to do. I like to leave the sticks, mulch up as many as I can, and if there's a few long ones that then I want to pick out, I can do that now. So when you're looking at this bed now, there is just this open space for everything to start growing up in. There's beautiful room for the hydrangeas to grow, the Joe Pyeweed behind it, the salvias, all these things now have all this room to grow. And all this mulch is going to be added back to the top, and that is where everything is going to start feeding that soil again. Now, I will definitely, if you keep following, show you in a couple months, everything is going to be grown to the point where you see none of this. So if you think this look is really ugly, remember it's feeding the soil, it's adding nutrients and organic matter, and you don't have to buy anything. That's the best part of this. So while organic fertilizer is always wonderful, and I do sometimes top dress this with still my compost or with one of the Espoma tones, like plant tone I will do on the boxwood and the arborvitae, this is just a great way to add even more goodness to your soil. But there's a couple places I don't mow and I want to show you. We're walking right over to the big bed behind my garden shed, I call it. So this is full of peonies in a couple months here, or even less than a month probably, and allium. It has some of those same perennials I like to mow down. But since there are so many other things in this bed, including lots of boxwood, you can see there's lots of green mountain for height and winter interest. There's a couple green velvet. There's lots of peonies. I don't mow those down because they're already showing their signs of growth, and you don't want to cut that off because they set their blooms really early. So a bed like this, I still manually will go in and do whatever maintenance I need to. But oftentimes with this one, I will go in just with my hand and crush up any of that allium debris, nepeta debris, calamint debris, and I will just push it, crunch it, let it fall back into the soil, and that's all that needs to happen since I can't get my mower in there as easily. You still, if you don't want to do this, putting this debris on your compost pile at least would be good. Don't get rid of it, it's great organic material. everyone's method for gardening is going to be different. We're coming at it from different directions. We live in different areas, different zones. But I think it's great to understand how we all approach it in our thought process and what we're learning along the way. And that's what this is all about. So I hope it hopefully inspires a few of you, maybe excites a few of you, or makes it see how gardening can be easier than you thought. That's the whole point here. You know, when you're one person trying to have probably a large yard beyond what should be workable for myself, because I kind of push myself too hard sometimes. You do these things because it helps not only the environment, but it helps you too. So enjoy, share the video around, because I hope it helps others just as much as it could help you. And soon enough, I'm gonna be showing you lots of beauty, lots of green, lots of blooms, because it's coming.